Old Testament prophet often meant that you had to say and see things you didn't quite understand.
Ezekiel was no exception to this. God led him to a valley filled with dried bones. It wasn't a pretty sight.
Then God asked Ezekiel a question. Can these bones live?
Ezekiel had no idea, so he answered truthfully, "Oh Lord, you know."
Then God told Ezekiel to prophesy to these bones and hear the word of the Lord.
"I will cause breath to enter into you, and you shall live. And I shall put flesh upon you and cover you with skin.
And you shall know that I am the Lord." So Ezekiel said what God told him to say.
When he had spoken, the bones began to rattle and connect.
Muscles began to form and cover the bones. Eventually, flesh covered the muscles and bone.
There were a bunch of people lying around, but they didn't have the breath of life in them.
Then God breathed into them, and they lived and stood upon their feet and became a great army.
The Valley of Dead, Dry Bones must have been a startling scene for the prophet Ezekiel.
It must have been even crazier when these bones became living, breathing people.
But what does this story mean? God was telling Ezekiel that he had not forgotten his people.
God keeps his promises. His people had been scattered because of their sin. Sin leads to death.
But God promises to revive and redeem his people once again.
It's also a picture of what God will do in the new birth. Salvation isn't just bad people becoming good, it's dead people in their sins becoming alive.
Sin leads to death, but God promises to revive and redeem his people.
It's important to remember that God keeps his promises. Israel has been dead and scattered because of their sin.
But God is faithful and is still bringing the dead to life.
Our first point, God will redeem Israel.
The dry bones represent the nation of Israel. Israel was scattered as a nation. They were as good as finished.
But God wasn't done with them. In Genesis, God promises Abraham that all the world's nations would be blessed through his offspring.
That meant the chosen people of Abraham's family would be the cause of this blessing. The Hebrews or the Jews.
God keeps his promises. Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment of this blessing.
God also made a promise to David. He told him that his descendant would be king forever.
Jesus is heir to the throne of David. One day, Jesus will return as the Lion of the tribe of Judah and the Son of David.
And Jesus will redeem Israel and be their king forever.
Secondly, God will redeem all who call on his name.
Paul says in Romans that he is not ashamed of the gospel, for it is the power of God to salvation to all who believe, to the Jew first, and then to the Gentiles.
When the Bible talks about Gentiles, it essentially means anyone who is not Jewish.
God had given the children of Israel his law and his commandments, but the Gentiles were pagans who worshipped false gods.
Jesus came to save not only the children of Israel, but all who would believe in him.
Like the Jews, the Gentiles broke God's law too. Jesus is the same door that they can enter through.
There are not two different ways to salvation, one for Jews and one for Gentiles. Salvation only comes through Jesus.
Finally, God will redeem all of creation.
When Jesus comes back, he will establish his kingdom here on earth.
He will right all the wrongs. In the book of Revelation, Jesus says, "Behold, I make all things new."
Jesus is going to redeem all the broken things about our physical world.
Paul tells us in the book of Romans that creation groans for this coming day.
This world knows it's broken and is eagerly waiting for God to come and fix it.
We know he will because God keeps his promises. Have you ever entered the door into God's family through Jesus?
If not, today is the day to turn to him and come alive.